Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to this most special Shabbat morning services here at Temple Emunah. This is our first time that we've come a little bit back into the sanctuary, as we wish the Deshevsky family Mazal Tov on Ari's Bar Mitzvah in the sanctuary, and no one else is. So we're trying to keep with all of the most safe approaches to this pandemic. You'll see them at times wearing masks because they're trying to model good mask wearing in different places. So even though it's just their family, we're trying to model that as much as possible. And welcome again to our service. And it's wonderful to celebrate a simcha together and to be together in this way. A happy occasion, especially during this time, is such a gift. Like many of us who are blessed to be able to work during this most unusual time, my days are filled with Zoom meetings. This is when normally I would then ask you to raise your hands. Who's doing a lot of Zoom meetings? Of course, that's, you could raise your hand in the chat or something like that. Sometimes I have Zoom meetings back to back for hours and hours straight. To paraphrase the Yiddish, we can become a little bit ausgezumt when our eyes start to glaze over from too many hours staring at the screen. But there is another problem with regular Zoom meetings, which is that often you can see yourself. Right now, most of you do not see yourselves because you're attendees in this webinar and until the end when we invite you on our virtual Bima. But all those on our virtual Bima see themselves. But if you think about that, in every meeting on Zoom, you have two boxes, even if it's just you and one other person, you and that other person. How many times, let me ask, have your eyes drifted over to your box? Well, of course they do. I'll speak for myself. I often find myself staring at my own face. Am I actually in the box? Is my kippah on straight? Boy, what happened to all of my hair? Or for many of you, maybe you think, when will I finally get my hair cut? Right now, I do not see myself since I'm actually blocking my screen by reading from my notes. But most of the time, I know that my eyes have a tendency to wander towards my box. That is, until a couple of weeks ago, when a friend of mine told me about a feature on Zoom. She told me to move my arrow over to the three dots in the top right-hand corner of my Zoom box and click there. It offers you a number of options like the ability to mute yourself, to stop your video, but below that option, you may not have noticed it, is an option called Hide Self-View. Now, I clicked it, and suddenly my box disappeared. My screen jumped from two boxes to one. And instead of glancing side to side, looking at myself and looking at my friend, I was just looking at her. And since her image was now centered on my screen and much larger, I could both see her more clearly and look directly at her face, since my camera was centered right above her. Until that moment, every Zoom meeting I was in included me. And the normal self-conscious human tendency is to look at yourself. But it's actually not normal to be in a conversation with someone else and be seeing yourself. The truth is, it not only takes you away from that other person, but it is exhausting as your brain has to process extra information about yourself. How am I responding? How am I looking? Oh, I need to make an adjustment with myself. You're doing all of that in addition to trying to follow the other person in the conversation. It's no wonder that we are all zoomed out. Ari introduced this morning's reading so thoughtfully, Parshat Shlach Lecha, the story of the 12 spies or the 12 scouts, is all about how Joshua and Caleb realized that when you rely on yourselves, you can accomplish almost anything. Great words, Ari. And holding a positive perspective can truly be transformative. We know how that is helping us during this time of COVID-19, and that it can help us to overcome this challenge, including even the challenge of having your bar mitzvah in a very different manner than you expected. But I want to look at another key phrase in the text. At the beginning of the parasha that Ari read so nicely, the Torah says that God speaks to Moshe and asks him to send a group of scouts. But the wording is interesting. It says, Shlach lecha, literally send them unto yourself. The text might have stated simply, send them, shlach. Why shlach lecha? Send them for yourself. Rabbi Kushner in our Eitz Chaim Chumash points us to the Midrash where it says that the added word lecha, for you, is God telling the Israelites that this is for you. God seems to be saying, I have told you already that the land is good and that I will give it to you. You will be taken care of. If you need human confirmation of that, go ahead and send scouts. My favorite commentator, the Sfat Emet, Rabbi Yehuda Leib Alter of Ger, goes in a different direction. He explains that one of the greatest things that we can do is to be a shaliach, a messenger, an emissary. There is something so wonderful and important about actually bringing something to someone. Some of us have been doing that recently by bringing groceries to people who are staying at home during this pandemic. Then the Sfat Emes reminds us that we are all actually scouts, messengers. We are asked by God to be God's hands in this world, to be God's messengers in this realm by performing mitzvot. That is what all of human existence is about. And then the Sfat Emet adds another critical aspect of performing mitzvot and serving as messengers for God. He says that we have to try to negate our own desires, our own focus on our own selves. We have to try to put aside our own needs for a moment. That's what the other scouts, the other 10 scouts struggled with. They could not get beyond themselves, their own fears, their own worries. The Sfat Emet reminds us that we are not sending the scouts for themselves, but they were actually being sent to do something for others, for God, for the people, for something beyond themselves. That's the essence of our tradition. As my teacher, Rabbi Art Green, wrote, while everything we do can contain some aspect of holiness, some aspect of eternal meaning, in order to fully achieve that, we are asked to negate our will before that of God and do all you do only for the sake of heaven. That reminds us of this moment. Amidst this pandemic, we realize that our actions are not just about ourselves. We wear our masks not merely to protect ourselves, but to protect others. When we hide our self-view on Zoom, we perform an act of tzimtzum, an act of Kabbalistic contraction, making ourselves a little bit smaller so that there can be more room for others. As we enter into a summer like no other, let us renew our commitments to one another and make sure we close our own boxes, hiding our self-view at times so that we can make space and care for everyone else. Shabbat Shalom.